Hi, everybody, and welcome to the DM podcast. This is a new podcast that DM are doing, and we're doing a number over the next few months, which we hope you will all find of interest. So we're kicking this off in a big way, and I've got Monica Collings here, who is our non-exec director, Andrew Barker is our managing director, and myself, James Neal, who's the CEO. And we are looking at the King's Speech and what Labour is now promising to try and achieve over its next term in government. And there is an awful lot in there, particularly for our industry. And we're looking really at how that will affect the UK, but also what our clients need to do to get ready for it. And more importantly, what we can do to help our clients get ready for it. So enjoy. Welcome, Monica and Andrew. Thanks for coming to today's podcast, looking at planning for tomorrow's future. Before we crack on, I think it'd be great if you guys could just tell us a bit about you two and where you've come from, how you fit into the DM world.
Yeah, James, thanks so much for having me. So my name is Monica Collings. I'm a former retail energy chief exec. I've been working in the energy sector for about the last 8 years. Prior to that, I've worked in lots of adjacents across automotive, retail, home improvement, property sectors as well. I sit on the board at DM, so part of my role as a non-exec is to be a supporter and advisor and to provide that scrutiny and challenge to the executive team in delivering the right outcomes for its customers.
Thanks, Monica. Andrew Barker, I'm Managing Director at Dalcour Maclaren, and I've been here for 20 years. My role has varied over those 20 years. I've been involved in some of the biggest projects across the UK, both in energy but also water and transport as well. I now sit on the exec board, and I'm responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the company.
We are looking at the future here in terms of what's going to happen over the next sort of 10, 20 years. And we've got a new leadership in the government, with Labour having taken power. And there's lots of good signs in terms of they're coming out of them. So I think the first thing we want to sort of just chat about would be actually, we've had the King's Speech. We've already seen some interesting decision making happening very quickly within the Labour government. And I think it'd be good for us to have just a little chat about what we think that impact has on looking forward, and we can then lead on to actually what can DM do about that.
Well, I think the government's been very quick off the blocks if we look at it in terms of action, and they've been very action driven, and not just in one area but across the board. What we saw in the King's Speech, a number of bills that focused on areas that particularly affect DM's client base. So we saw recommendations on reviews of policy and reform in major infrastructure across utilities, across the energy sector, across water. We saw the rail sector in terms of nationalisation of the railways. We saw all sorts of discussion around planning reforms and what that can mean. But what struck me about all of that is that ultimately at the heart of all of this, the government seems to be very focused on attracting investment, to driving investment in the UK, both through its own spending, but also to galvanise and kickstart that private sector investment in order to contribute to the development that is needed in order to get the UK to be at the heart of the delivery of its net zero ambition. So, for example, the introduction of GB Energy, which originally did start out as a consumer energy vehicle to sell energy to consumers directly, is now very much about investing directly in new projects, owning and managing those projects. So it seems that is very much at the heart of what we heard in the King's Speech.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the investment piece is a really important piece. We've seen some nervousness with some of our clients over the last few years from an investment perspective, just nervous about costs, nervous about supply chain. So I think it's really important to be attracting that investment, and it's going to need to be private investment that's going to come in and start really investing in some of these massive projects, but some great opportunity for these investors to get involved and play their part in helping us achieve net zero, because net zero really has been potentially at risk in the UK, and I think unless we really get this investment to come in, we're not going to be hitting that target.
Yeah, and I was going to ask her, you mentioned 31 bills, I think you said that they've put before. Okay, the proof will be in the pudding of whether they actually achieve that. Let's hope they do. They've started off well with a we've already had some decisions out of Ed Miliband that have opened people's eyes in terms of solar developments, which has been quite interesting. But, do we really think that they are going to turn things around? Do we really think that they are going to change the direction? Because I agree, Andrew, what you said. We've seen it even in sort of what we call sort of the big sexy regeneration projects like offshore wind. We've had companies backing out. Do you think there will be that total change?
Well, I think as you say, proof is going to be in the pudding. But I think we've been here before in the past. If I've been a sceptic about it in terms of trying to speed up the consenting process, that's what the Planning Act was all about in the first place. Was about speeding up process. Has it delivered on that? No, I don't think it has. So it'd be really interesting to see what initiatives the government are planning to really kind of make this change, because we're just seeing projects take too long to get to the consenting stage, and it needs to go faster.
We also very much need to make sure that government is very strategic about the decisions in which it's making. So the onshore wind removal of the ban on onshore wind is quite significant, and we're already starting to see projects going through that planning stage as a result of that change in policy. But when we look at it, the investment that the government is making in GB Energy is about 8 billion, I think 8.3 billion. In order for the wind targets to be achieved, I think I read a number somewhere that suggested that an additional 100 billion in private investment was going to be required to achieve the sort of numbers that were being cited. So it really is about galvanising those funds and putting them in the right way, in the right projects, so that we can kickstart that investment that hopefully then will have momentum building and spiralling impact.
Yeah, and I think the challenge the government got is that they obviously want the best of both worlds, don't they? But they want the investment and they want to keep electricity price low, and that is the challenge. I read an article the other day that the country that has done the most renewable work in the world is China, which no one would ever think is. But they
probably achieved that in a shorter space of time. See, we were market leaders in the renewable energy market, and we're not anymore. And the aim of the government is to get back and reclaim that title. But I think the onshore wind point is quite an interesting one, Monica. It's the cheapest form, one of the cheapest forms anyway, of electricity that can be implemented really quite quickly. Still quite controversial though, from a planning perspective. Nobody wants it in their backyard. We've been working the offshore wind market since 2010, both onshore and offshore. We've seen more developments offshore, clearly. They're much bigger developments, but they take a lot longer. But they are having an impact, having a very positive impact. They can generate up to 60% of what the UK demands these days, which is a massive success story. But there's a risk of that pausing if we don't get that investment coming through. And from an onshore perspective, you see what's been achieved across Scotland and Wales. That's been really successful. Arguably, they might have more land to go at, but possibly not. But with the right sensitive approach to planning, it could be a winner, and certainly will play a fundamental part in delivering more projects quicker.
The government seems to be dissolving more power locally, doesn't it? And I would just wonder what impact that might start to have around some of those local planning decisions.
That's a good point, and it could go either way. I'm not sure actually that the local authorities may be more protective, but time will tell on that.
So normally, as normal people do, what we've done is we've jumped straight into the big sexy. So we've jumped into the renewables and the big offshore wind farms, all that stuff. There's actually a lot of other stuff that's happening within the King's Speech that affects what we do on a day-to-day basis, and the net zero agenda, and that's there's some interesting stuff on water. If you look at the water industry, I mean, if I was a CEO of the water industry, I'd be thinking, oh my God, what's coming down the tracks here, with them potentially being personally liable for sewage pollution incidents.
And this is the government really holding those water companies to account.
Yes.
And what's absolutely necessary, that we should be committed on cleaning up our water courses. And enhancing the environment and the habitats that are out there. And I think we will play a huge part in that. We've been working for multiple water companies since 2003. It was always our bread and butter work right from the very start, and we've just continued to grow that work. And it's now moved from being solely about water supplies to actually protecting the environment, cleaning the environment, and cleaning overflows and that kind of thing. And it's really important work, but there's a huge amount to do, and funding there again is going to be crucial.
And I think, linked to that, which worries me a bit, is that they're now going to be setting housing targets, which were done away with by the previous government. So there's going to be a huge pressure for new homes to be built, which adds to everything. So forget renewables. Suddenly we've got more houses to keep the lights on.
And that's quite interesting as well, because I was over in Northern Ireland a few weeks ago at our office over there, and I was talking to a very chatty taxi driver, as you do, and we were talking about flooding at the time, and they don't get any flooding over there, very little flooding at all. And most of that must be driven by the fact that there just isn't the bigger developments like we've got around England especially. And so these extra housing commitments that the government are putting out there are just going to put more and more pressure on the water companies, on the watercourses, and on the environment generally. And all of the work we do for multiple utilities, whether it's in the water sector, transport, power sector, energy sector, are all going to play a part in actually trying to mitigate those impacts.
Does feel like there's an alignment that's coming around capturing the zeitgeist of the nation and what people have been talking about and concerned about for a good number of years, and actually the actions and the policies that are now being put into place in order to address some of these issues. And for clients of DM, certainly to be bringing a customer-centric approach to the work that they're doing, engaging with communities at a deeper level, I suppose, on some of these topics, and at the same time being really conscious about the opportunities these projects present to them, but also how can they be delivered in the most efficient way so that the biggest amount of value can be gleaned from them. And I suppose that's where having expertise come in across multiple sectors, seeing the holistic picture of what's been trying to achieve, what we're trying to achieve here, because there are so many new technologies that are coming down the line. We've got hydrogen, carbon capture, and these are going to be really important in helping us to achieve net zero. There is no one silver bullet. We can't just rely on one piece of technology to deliver the right outcome for us. And yes, we're all concerned about things like affordability and security of supply, and these things will become bigger issues for us as we move forward, undoubtedly. But it's going to be really important that we figure out how these new technologies become part of everyday life.
And I see that DM's got a really big part to play in helping with that knowledge sharing. I think knowledge sharing across sectors is something we've not done enough of in the past, whereas we've got the added benefit of being 100% dedicated to the sector, to the utilities and infrastructure sector, but we are in multiple sectors, whether it's water, transport, energy, telecoms, and added to that the whole environmental planning and geomatics piece that we can pull in together. Collectively, we can share a lot of knowledge between our sectors to help kind of find the best way to approach these projects.
So, Andrew, I'll just pick you up on the point you just raised, which was about sharing information across our sectors. Have you got some good examples of where we've done that?
Yeah, there's probably loads of examples I could think of, but if I was to pick one, let's say Gatwick Airport, we were initially brought in to do land referencing on that project. It's a major project affecting multiple thousands of parties. And we ended up land referencing, but we then were also bringing in teams to deal with land access for surveys, and then bringing in a land and property team to deal with all the property transactions. They're all teams that have been working on different projects for different clients in different sectors in our industry that are bringing in more improved ways of working from their experience and from their knowledge and from their different skill sets to really deliver an A-star service to that client. And we've got loads of examples of that. We've done it on HS2. If we don't do it on every project, there's a problem.
I'll bring up the HS2 one because I think that's quite interesting. Which is, and again, this was kind of us coming on board with HS2, organising access to land, and suddenly HS2 put on us that we needed to get access to nearly, I think it was 300 sites a day. We had to get access to go out to do surveys or boreholes or whatever it might be, which you think, oh my God, how the hell are we going to do that? And we absolutely revolutionised the way that we then approached getting access to land. Now, we've pulled it off, and the client has been really happy with what we've done. We've moved on to the section that's now been cancelled, but we moved on to do it for that as well. But actually what that's meant for the business is that actually we've learned an awful lot from that, and we've managed then to put that experience across to every single client that we work for in terms of how we access land going forward. So, volume of access for surveys is a really good example where we've shared knowledge, and that will continue to evolve. And I think the key thing for us as a business is that we're not siloed. We make sure that actually when one sector learns, we all learn. And that is a challenge for us, but it's something that we're very focused on.
I think that's a very good example with HS2, because at the time, the quantum, the extent of that survey programme was unprecedented. So we were tasked with this challenge that we've never really seen on that scale before. We're now starting to see it actually more and more on bigger projects, whether it's on our nuclear power station projects, whether it's on the long-distance linear projects. The extent of the surveys that are needed is just huge. So actually taking a different approach to that land access and learning what we learnt on HS2 and applying it to our other clients and our other sectors has brought massive benefit.
Yeah. Monica, same kind of question to you. I know you haven't been here long, but we've certainly thrown you in the deep end. But I'd be interested to know, you have much more of an overview of the business, of how you've seen DM being able to react not only within sort of one sector but across all of the sectors.
Yeah, it's been really lovely actually. So I had one-to-ones with all of the sector leads as part of my induction to be able to connect into their business plans and how they're working with their clients. And it's been really interesting to see how they share and collaborate across the business as well to leverage some of the benefits of different teams, whether that's geomatics or even across different sector teams. And what I've been really impressed with is how some of that learning has been taken into new geographies. So not just within this sector within the UK, we've seen Ireland becoming a really interesting emerging space for us, not just in one sector either, but across a number of sectors. So I think that there is huge potential for us to be able to extend the services that we have internationally to benefit clients who operate in more than one country potentially in the future.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Ireland is showing significant potential right now. We went into Scotland 2 or 3 years ago when we saw that potential off the back of ScotWind, but also the electricity transmission constraints in terms of capacity. And we've seen some real successes over there. And I really believe actually that Ireland is going to follow that soon enough. It's been a little bit slow. I think legislation is just hampering things a little bit, but particularly in the offshore wind market, because there's huge offshore wind potential around Ireland, and we've done so much offshore wind work around English and Welsh waters, and now starting to in Scottish waters as well. With a number of clients, whether it's RWE or Orsted, and we're seeing those players as well going into Ireland now and starting to plan their projects. So I think a lot of potential over there, and we're already tapping up those projects and building a team.
Yeah, and I think what's really encouraging for me is that actually, it's our clients talking to us saying, how about it? We can't find anybody over there who's going to do what you do. Actually, that's been really encouraging, and not just Ireland. We're now looking beyond that, and I think that's really exciting as well. Net zero is happening in the UK, and we've talked about that a lot today. It's happening the world over.
And not just niche. I mean, niche is great, but actually I think, and I'm not particularly a fan of the one-stop shop phrase, but I do think that there is something about us having multiple services on offer that means that we can really add value to clients because we get it.
We used to talk about being a tech-led business, and tech is definitely part of what we're all about, but we want to be a data-led business, and that's more important. We need to make sure that data is making our decisions. But equally, you're right, the world is getting full of more and more data, and you can use it in lots of different ways. Elon Musk is terrified about AI, and probably if you really look into it, you can understand why. But certainly, even on today with a Google search, landowners know an awful lot more than they did 10 years ago. You type in, how do I stop this? You've got thousands of websites that tell you how to make life difficult, which causes us challenges. But I guess what we need to make sure we're doing is that actually we know these problems, we can deal with these problems, and really what's really important for us is that we're efficient with it as well. And as our business grows and morphs, we are looking at a business that has, yes, that really efficient, effective, tech-led kind of solutions for our clients, but also we have the expertise that adds the value, gets them out of holes that they will definitely need to get to.
And I think over and above that, if you look at the fact that we're dedicated to the sector, as I say, that means that our data is also pure data specifically used for the purposes or collected for the purposes of our clients only. And actually there's some real value in that in terms of if we capitalise on how we use that data in the right way, then actually we can really be helping not just speed up our decisions, but help speed up our clients' decisions and get better results for our projects.
So just bring it right back to what we started talking about, which is the King's Speech. Right. So the King's Speech has set out all these things which we're thinking, for us, we know this world, it's our world, utilities and infrastructure, oh my God, there's a lot to do here. Do you think the public understand the enormity of the task ahead?
I think it's impossible to expect them to. No disrespect to them at all. I think it's very difficult to understand the scale and enormity. I would probably even say it from our perspective is that do we truly understand the number of projects that are about to hit at speed over the next few years as we lead up towards that net zero target of 2030? I think the penny will be dropping. I think they'll be starting to realise, but to fully understand the quantum of what's involved, it's got to be almost.
And I guess the reason I asked that question though is because my concern is that until they truly understand what net zero means, because it doesn't just mean sticking up a wind farm in the sea. There's all the added complication of new networks and greater connectivity, all those kind of things. We're going to see, and we're seeing it already with some of our projects that we're involved with now for National Grid and people like that. There is a backlash against, and you talked about NIMBYism. You're never going to get rid of that. But how do you think we can help try and get the public to understand the enormity? Or how can not just us but the industry help?
I think it's a really good question, and I think it's probably a challenge that everyone in the industry has got. But I think we've all got to play our part in trying to educate the public, and there won't be a one-size-fits-all in trying to get that. But I think what's really important to message is that it's not just about energy. It's actually about all of the sectors that we're in. We're playing a part in all of those sectors that will help the whole 2030 target. So if you look at the transport and infrastructure sector that we've got, HS2 is one example project, a pretty big example, accepted, but it was labelled as a high-speed project. It's not actually much faster than I can get to Stafford in just as quick these days, but it's actually a green initiative is HS2. The trains that will be running off green energy. They'll be taking millions of vehicles off the road, especially lorries off the road, and we'll be making a big difference. But HS2 don't seem to shout about that quite so much. So there's an educational piece. That's one example of actually what the benefit of these projects are bringing.
Right, guys, thanks very much for all your insights today. It's been a really interesting conversation. I think when you do these podcasts, you think, "Oh my God, what do I talk about?" But actually, as we found, we could have kept talking about this for even longer. So some really interesting stuff that I think that we've gleaned out of today. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one where we have a bit of a catch up to see what's happened after the next 90 days in government. Thank you.
Thanks very much.